Hello and welcome to Mysteries of Science. I'm Dan and I'm the editor of Science and Nature, the monthly magazine from the team behind The Week Junior.
And I'm Michael, the junior editor. On this show, we explore all manner of strange and spooky phenomena, from the Loch Ness Monster to whether or not ghosts exist.
But today, we're going to be talking about something a bit more serious, a big topic which you'll have heard a lot about, climate change, which is also sometimes referred to as the climate crisis.
Now, as we speak, world leaders are meeting in Egypt for COP27, which is a big meeting organised by the United Nations to discuss climate change and what we're going to do about it.
So COP stands for the Conference of Parties, and the 27 bit is, well, just because it's the 27th of such meeting.
Yes, some of you may remember COP26, which was held last year in Glasgow.
Yeah, so as this is going on right now, we thought it was a great opportunity to explore one of the greatest mysteries of our time, and an open question still: can we fix climate change?
In this episode, we'll be exploring what climate change is, what's causing it, and most importantly, what we can do about it. This is Mysteries of Science.
So, Michael, climate change, it's a big and, well, sometimes daunting topic. So where are we going to start with this?
Well, the first step in solving any problem is understanding what it is in the first place. So we've got someone to help us explain what climate change actually is. And some of you might recognise him off the telly.
Hi there, my name's Liam Dutton. I'm a weather presenter at Channel 4 News, and my job involves researching as a meteorologist the weather every day and then presenting it on the television to everybody to watch.
Good to have you on Mysteries of Science. Now, as well as presenting the weather forecasts on Channel 4 News, I know you've got a new book out called Weather Camera Action, A Meteorologist's Guide to the Sky. So help us out here. Help me out, Liam. What exactly is climate change?
Well, I think the easiest way to define it is to kind of say what weather is and climate change. And weather's the kind of day-to-day changes of, you know, one day you get sunshine and then it's a bit blustery, and then one day it's cool and it's a bit warmer. But climate change is an average of the weather over longer time periods, so either decades, like every 10-year periods or 30-year periods. And that allows us to kind of, you know, look at how things are changing over a longer period of time.
Okay, so I think that's a really important distinction that Liam just made there. We've got the day-to-day weather, that's your weather forecast stuff, you know, rain, sunshine, clouds, etc.
And climate is the weather over a longer period of time.
And the term climate change is used to describe how the climate is changing, you know, as it has been, you know, over such a long period. But in more recent times, where we've been putting more greenhouse gases into the air, like carbon dioxide and methane in particular, that's caused the climate to warm significantly compared to how it used to be. So what we're seeing now is, you know, take, for example, the top 7 warmest years on record have all happened since 2015, you know, in terms of global warmth. So we're seeing, you know, each decade since the 1980s is being warmer than the previous decade. So it's effectively looking at how the global climate is changing over a longer time period and how that's having an effect on the weather that we experience currently compared to how we did before.
Liam mentioned something there called greenhouse gases and gave us 2 examples of those greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. But what are greenhouse gases exactly?
So greenhouse gases are one of the major causes of climate change, and these are gases which, when released into the atmosphere, trap heat, therefore making it hotter.
And how are these gases released or emitted into the atmosphere?
Well, these gases can be released through lots of different activities: farming, deforestation, which is the chopping down of trees. But one of the main ways is through the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. And we do this to create energy, which we use to heat our homes or for transportation, but it can have a negative effect on the environment.
And that's why here at the Week Junior and the Week Junior Science and Nature, we define climate change as long-term changes in world weather patterns, including rising temperatures caused by human activities.
So tell us, Liam, have you noticed the effects of climate change while you've been reporting the weather?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, since I started working in weather, and, you know, I've been doing it for almost 20 years, and the UK's maximum temperature record has been broken 3 times since I've been doing the job. You know, initially in 2003 in August, we got to 38.5, and then just a few years ago it was broken again by a small margin in Cambridge. And then this year we had that heat wave whereby, for the first time in the UK, we got over 40 degrees Celsius. We reached 40.3, so it beat the old record, not by just a small margin, but by a significant degree. And it's not just heat, it's things like rainfall as well around the world when we have, rainfall events and rain tied in with hurricanes and other things. The amounts of rain that's falling in these events, is increasing because as the atmosphere warms, it can hold more moisture. And that means there's the potential for more rainfall. And when we get thunderstorms, the intensity of the rainfall is rising. And then things like heat are exacerbating things like drought, particularly in places like the Mediterranean and into Africa as well. So, in the time that I've been doing it, there's been significant and really notable quick change in the level and, the number of extremes that we're seeing.
So climate change is looking at things in the long term, like beyond day-to-day weather. But that doesn't mean it's a faraway or distant problem. We are experiencing the effects of climate change right now. And as Liam just explained, rising temperatures can have some big consequences.
So that's why it's so important for us to talk about it and try to find some solutions. So Liam, what can we do to fix it?
Yeah, well, I think from a kind of, world leaders' point of view, it's just about putting in place ways whereby we can reduce our carbon emissions effectively. So it's looking for alternative solutions. So rather than, and this is happening significantly already. I mean, the switch to renewable energy sources has already made them much cheaper than they were, a few years ago. And there's been a huge reduction in the amount of coal being burned to provide energy. Obviously coal, particularly from the Industrial Revolution onwards, was a huge contributor of global emissions, CO2 emissions in particular. So it's just looking at ways whereby we can make switches societally, use renewable energy sources, switch to solar, wind, that sort of thing, hydroelectric. And cars is a huge one. The number of cars on the planet are switching away from petrol and diesel to electric cars, or even looking at alternatives for short journeys such as walking or cycling or using public transport.
Right. Climate change is being caused by carbon emissions, so reducing those emissions is the solution. That sounds sensible, right? So what are these renewable energy sources that Liam was talking about?
So he mentioned a couple of them there: solar, which uses the power of the sun, and wind, which, you guessed it, uses the power of the wind. Some of you may have even seen those big offshore wind turbines. Now, these are known as renewable energy sources because, unlike fossil fuels, they're not going to run out. And also, unlike fossil fuels, and most importantly here, they don't generate any carbon emissions.
Fantastic. Let's start building these wind turbines and putting up solar panels then, I think. But that's kind of big picture stuff, isn't it? That's not stuff that average people can do, I don't think. What about, is there anything day to day that the average person like me can do to tackle climate change?
There's things like, just going to school, if possible, walk rather than taking the car, and turning off lights when we're not using them. Sometimes we might nip to another room and we forget to turn the light up in the other room. And if you think that happens over thousands and millions of homes across the planet, just everybody turning off that light will make a huge difference. And also consider eating less meat, because farming is pretty intensive in terms of contributing to global emissions. There are fertilizers, a lot of energy is used to farm animals, and even the animals themselves, when they burp and fart, they produce methane, which is a greenhouse gas. So that's another way in which we can do things. And another big thing is flying. Flying is a massive contributor to kind of greenhouse gas emissions. And if we can take the train somewhere on a short haul journey rather than flying, or considering if we really need to fly somewhere at all, it's all those sorts of everyday decisions that sometimes we kind of forget because we just take them for granted. And actually, by just thinking a little bit more and planning a little bit more, we can actually all make a little bit of a difference.
Okay, this is great. We're getting some practical everyday solutions here, things that we can all do to make a difference. But it does seem to me like if we're really going to tackle this massive problem, then we're going to need to think big and kind of imagine another world, like a whole new way of doing things compared to how we live now.
Well, our next guest is certainly someone with a big imagination.
Hi, my name is Nicola Penfold, and I'm the author of some books for young people, including Where the World Turns Wild, which was my first book, which showed a world that's been rewilded, Between Sea and Sky, which shows a future world where sea levels have risen and lots of species have died out, including pollinators. And my latest book is Beyond the Frozen Horizon, and this is another futuristic book, but one with a slightly more hopeful outlook.
Hi, Nicola. Welcome to Mysteries of Science. Can you tell us a little bit more about your latest book? What's Beyond the Frozen Horizon about?
So Beyond the Frozen Horizon is a story about our future, but it's a very optimistic outlook. And I've imagined that humanity has really woken up to the climate, the huge climate and biodiversity crisis that we're all facing at the moment. And they've done a lot to tackle this. So the world is in a much better place, but there are still lots of things that need to be done. 13-year-old Rory, my main character, travels with her mum to Svalbard, which is a remote archipelago halfway between Norway and the North Pole. Her mum's a geologist and she's involved in mining for rare earth metals. These are metals that are used in lots of green technology. So they're used in wind turbines, they're used in electric cars, they're used in batteries. And in my book, Rory's mum is involved in a company that is trying to get more of these rare earth metals to further green technology so the world can advance again, so people can have more of the things that they're missing. But there's a cost to that. There's always a downside. Every bit of progress we make, there can be consequences, and Rory discovers some of the consequences for the wildlife and the people that make Svalbard their home.
Oh, it sounds really exciting. I'm going to take a punt here. I'm guessing that Nicola did a lot of research into climate change while she was writing this book.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really stuck with her was some of the natural solutions to climate change that she discovered. In particular, whale poo.
Whales feed in the depths of the ocean, but then they return to the surface of the ocean, to the photic zone where there's light, and that's where they poo, and they do these massive poos, which are full of iron and nitrogen, and they fertilize the plankton at the top of the ocean. So that the phytoplankton, the plant plankton, and that is involved in that photosynthesizes and that absorbs carbon dioxide. So whales enable these plumes of phytoplankton, which then take carbon out of our atmosphere. They do other things too. They mix up the water, so they're always keeping the plankton at the top of the water. Whales themselves, these are huge whales, some of them like the bowhead whale. When they die, their body, which itself has become this great store of carbon, if it just dies naturally, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean and the carbon is locked away for hundreds of years. So if we had more whales, that would be great for climate change.
Great stuff, Michael. I'm very pleased that in the middle of this very serious topic, you found a space to get some poo in there. I had no idea that whale poo was so important.
Yes, well, if cows burping and farting can be a problem, then perhaps whale poo is a solution.
Yeah, sometimes help can come from the most unlikely of places.
We laugh, but as Nicola explains, maintaining a sense of hope and optimism is crucial if we're going to fix climate change.
It's really important that we maintain a sense of hope, because with hope comes action, and it's very easy to think about the climate crisis and just to despair, but then that paralyzes you switch off, you don't take action. And actually there are lots of things we can do. There are lots of things that we will do that we'll be forced into doing. So I think hope is really, really important.
And Nicola's not the only one who has imagined a brighter future for planet Earth.
Hi, I'm Cindy Ford. I'm really delighted to be with you. And I wear several hats, actually. I mean, I've been an environmentalist and an environmental activist for most of my life, from an angry teenager outside the gates to working in corporate social responsibility and SRI investing. And most lately in trying to enable children to understand Earth as an interconnected system. So I founded a company called Planetary, which is its express purpose is to do that. And I write children's books and create hopefully really fun, engaging things for children to explore planet Earth and to equip them to be the innovators and entrepreneurs of a brighter world.
Wow. Hi Cindy. Tell us, why did you write Bright New World?
Well, I think it's really to tell the story of the transformation that is possible. I think there's an awful lot of gloom and doom around what we're seeing with climate breakdown and ecological breakdown, and absolutely justifiably so. We are in a critical position, but there are almost all the solutions that we need to mitigate this are already here. So the main barrier to getting ourselves out of this situation is political and social. So if children can understand, and their parents and schools see what those solutions are and see that there's incredible people out there already doing this, then it gives much more hope and also gives the skill and the knowledge to be part of the transformation that we're looking for.
It's great to hear that almost all the solutions we need are already here. Cindy, can you tell us some more about what some of them might be?
Cambridge Zero. I'm here I live in Cambridge, so I have close connections with that. They're inventing all kinds of incredible things to intensify the ability of solar power. So these amazing crystals called perovskites, which are going to eventually enable you to print solar panels onto windows, onto the top of cars. So then you'll have a solar power car. All really fabulous things like that. Even artificial photosynthesis is being developed. So we could perhaps look forward to a time that we're actually creating our own energy directly from the sun. Fantastic young people in Indonesia, they saw their whole coastal areas being eroded, and that affected the livelihood of the community, because that comes out, a lot of that is from fishing and the marine industries. So they founded a company called Carbon Ethics, and they've restored the whole of that coastline, which is also a brilliant way of creating what we call blue carbon. Mangroves and coastal areas absorb actually a lot more CO2 than rainforests. So if we regenerate our mangroves, we're also regenerating our carbon sinks. And in the case of this company that these young people have created, Carbon Ethics, it also regenerates the community because it provides jobs for local people. So I hope that gives you a flavour of some of the transformative activities that are already happening that we feature in the book.
Those sound like some incredibly exciting projects, and it's great to hear how young people from around the world are leading the way on this.
Yeah, young people have been at the forefront of climate action with Earth heroes like Greta Thunberg, who started the Fridays for Future movement, which is, the school strike for climate action, or Amy and Ella Meek, who started the Kids Against Plastic campaign.
Kids Against Plastic is an environmental charity that focuses on empowering and showing young people the ways that they can really be an active role in tackling environmental issues like climate change and plastic pollution. And so we've been running it as a sister duo and as a family for nearly 7 years now, and our charity focuses on helping schools, lots of other different sectors, reduce their plastic usage and become what we call plastic clever. And then we also have a team of 240 young people from around the world who we work with on supporting their own environmental action.
We started Kids Against Plastic back in 2016 when we were studying the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And through studying these goals, we found out this common thread of plastic pollution. And just seeing a glimpse of this problem was really scary to us because it wasn't in the news anywhere, no one was really speaking about it, and we were seeing these images of how animals and nature is being impacted by plastic pollution. And as massive nature lovers, we knew we wanted to do something about it if it wasn't an issue that was being spoken about or acted upon enough. And so that's when we decided to set up our own campaign, very small homeschool kind of project with our family back then. And we just started off really simple with litter picking because we wanted to do something that was immediate and measurable and just do something as soon as possible.
Hi, I'm Bella Lack and I'm a young environmental campaigner, and I've been doing environmentalism since I was about 12, 13. I watched a video about the effects of palm oil on deforestation and on species such as orangutans, which at the time I was obsessed with when I was about 12. And I started a campaign in my school called In Our Palm, trying to get my classmates and teachers and friends to stop using products with palm oil in them. And then I got on social media, on Twitter, and I began to learn so much more about different issues. In 2019 and 2020, I filmed a documentary called Animal, and the idea was to meet people on the front lines of the environmental crisis and the extinction crisis and to hear the solutions they have. And then the book Children of the Anthropocene was the same idea, but it was to speak to just young people, because I'm not a scientist. I haven't learned the intricacies of kind of climate data, but what I could do as a young person was relate to other young people and hear their solutions. And it turns out there are so many young people all over the world who already have these pre-existing solutions, who I think should be uplifted and listened to. And one of them, a boy in Nairobi, Lisa Matunki, he loved football so much, and whenever he scored a goal he would plant a tree, and he started doing it individually, and then his friends got involved in his local community, and he ended up at a UN conference. He ended up also speaking to the Prime Minister, and it all started from these individual actions, and they ended up planting thousands of trees. Another example is Harvey Tweets, who lives in the UK, and he really loved reptiles and the idea of rewilding, and he began in his back garden with his friend during GCSEs, breeding functionally extinct reptiles in the UK wilderness and reintroducing them. And, you know, these are all young people who have a passion and decide to kind of pursue it. And it turns out from something really individual, it ripples out to something really large.
Now, this doesn't mean it's all on your shoulders. It's up to world leaders and those in power right now to make the big decisions that are going to make our world a better place. But you can make sure that they hear your voices.
So, Cindy, what advice would you give our listeners?
At the end of the book, we do put in 10 simple actions that you can do in your everyday life, and they might seem quite small things, you know, like checking where your food comes from. You know, if you buy your food locally, there's a lot less emissions and impacts. How you travel, you know, can you skip that journey in the car? Can you take your bike or get on a train? Hop on a bus? Do you really need that thing that you're about to buy? And if you do buy it, how long will you keep it? These kinds of decisions. But they seem little, but if everybody did it, they add up to an awful lot. Yes, there's a transition that needs to happen at the corporate level, at the governmental level that we've talked about, but we can do our part. And most of all, I would say, you know, dare. I use this phrase, dare, care, share, and dare to think differently, believe in yourself, and use your voice. So many people say, oh, I can't do anything about it, but, you know, most of us, you know, we're lucky to live in, you know, relatively democratic countries. We can write to our, I do exercises like this with children I work with. We write to the MPs and we tell them what kind of oceans we would like. We tell them what kind of food systems we would like. And they do listen because they want to be elected. So if all of us start saying, hey, this is the kind of world we want, it's not what you're doing right now, is it? Then they will listen to that. So I think that's a really important part of what you can do as well, is just simply using your voice and recognising your own power to ask for the kind of world you want.
I think the advice that we always give to young people is really don't underestimate the role that you can play, but also don't feel like you have to do everything at once, because sometimes environmental issues like plastic and climate change, they can seem really massive, and it can sometimes seem impossible to know where to start, because it feels like you need to do everything at once. Like you need to cut all plastic from your life, or you need to completely reduce all of the carbon emissions that you're responsible for, which obviously is amazing and something that a lot of us are trying to strive for. But for one person, especially as a young person, that's a massive expectation to put on yourself. So we always encourage people to look at the things that they enjoy doing and try and fit environmental action into that, whether it's drawing things that you can show at your school that spread the message of environmental issues, or whether it's writing a song or whether it's making posters. There's so many ways to get involved, and we as young people can have such an important voice to bring to the table when it comes to sustainability.
I would say one of the main things is campaign to your school to have climate education, because loads of the young people I've spoken to have said that they've had to learn everything via social media, and it's been a bit of a struggle, and it would be so much easier getting other young people involved if there was this easily accessible education at schools. And the next thing is that it seems so large and complex and overwhelming, but rather than be overwhelmed by that complexity, there's solutions which exist, which involve so much creativity and imagination. I think young people can get involved with those. So, for example, loads of the climate strikes, which have been happening now for a few years and are still happening, are incredibly passionate, fun events for young people to go to, and especially at this time when COP27 is happening, and only 24 of the 193 countries have submitted actual carbon emissions targets. So that's an amazing opportunity for young people to get involved and say to the rest of those countries, this is your time, we're watching, and we're having fun together whilst doing that.
Absolutely. You all have a voice and we want to hear it. This episode is just the beginning. We want you to get in touch with us and let us know what you've been doing at school and at home to help the environment, but also what message you'd like to send to our world leaders.
To get in touch, just head to funkidslive.com/mysteries and leave us a voice message by tapping the big red button. Your messages could be played on a future episode.
And don't forget to join us in 2 weeks' time for our next mystery, where, just like the world leaders at COP27, we'll be heading to Egypt, although a few thousand years in the past.
Yeah, we'll be taking a look at the pyramids of ancient Egypt and finding out just exactly what is lurking inside them. Until then, stay curious.
Thanks for listening to this podcast, which is made by the same people that make the Week Junior magazine. You can get 6 free issues of the Week Junior and 1 free issue of the monthly Week Junior Science and Nature by heading to theweekjunior.co.uk/podcast and using the code podcast at checkout.